With 6 of the current New Generation 11 being revealed and the U20 World Cup underway, many are excited to see the skills, talents, and performances of these future superstars. But with chapter 326, a confusion has befallen the community through the use of a retcon by the author, because Julian Loki, the 17, now 18-year-old national France player, was just revealed to be a New Generation 11. With this fact never being confirmed prior to now, despite his several appearances in the story, our community has become flooded by waves of unhealthy debate. But what if I told you that this moment here was not only not a retcon, but also gives segue to the eventual matchup against England in the U20 World Cup? That's because I believe that Loki stole the New Generation 11 title away from someone who will soon become a huge threat to BLUELOCK as we near the end of the group stage. Before I get into this video, I want to remind everyone that this is just a theory and is not meant to be taken as fact, only a possibility. And also, spoiler warning for the latest events of the BLUELOCK series, and if you are not caught up, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. Now, in order for this theory to make any kind of sense, we're going to have to just throw a bunch of random stuff onto a board here and kind of connect it all at the end. I might say a lot that doesn't make a lot of sense or seem like it has any connection, but trust me, it will. The first thing you need to consider is that the New Generation 11 is a title selected by FIFA and consists of superstars of the new generation of players that will eventually dominate the world stage in upcoming years. Meaning when current stars like Noah, Snuffy, and Chris Prince retire, the New Generation 11 will take their place as the focal points of soccer. But the term of New Generation 11 is something that only just recently got created in universe, thanks to Ray Dark. FIFA is who selected the players for the New Generation 11 title, meaning Ray Dark was the one to select them. And considering he was apparently scouting soccer talent throughout the world during Kaiser's backstory, seemingly when he was just an agent of the organization, it would stand to reason that this classification is a fairly new term, since Ray Dark's personality would be about marketability and his desire to pursue this endeavor, which would lead to him scouting players. Not to mention, the title of New Generation 11 doesn't seem to relate to the older generations at all. People like Noah, Snuffy, and Ego have only ever mentioned this title in relation to current players, not previous generations. So this title does seem to be a fairly new concept. So let's just chuck that up onto the board to start. The next point to consider is that not every new gen has likely been selected yet. Some might have very recently received or lost the title. Based on its recency within the BLUELOCK universe, given the last 3 to 4 years at most, given the timeline as it relates to Kaiser and Sai's backstory, it's a solid possibility that not every title has been distributed yet, meaning some players could still receive or lose the title. Let's take Nagi for example. Nagi had an incredible performance going into the game against Bass Dimension, performing a technique that scored a goal that across social media was labeled as the goal of the century. This technique, the 5-stage revolver fake volley, was able to not only beat out Isagi and Gagamaru, 2 high skill level players, but also Michael Kaiser, one of the current New Generation 11. This moment was incredibly huge in the new Egoist League and set the precedent for Nagi moving forward, including his downfall. But assuming that this wasn't the start of his downfall and only his rise to fame, Nagi easily would have gotten the New Generation 11 title, a goal of the century to make himself known, and his previous opening goal against the Japan U20 team not even 2 months earlier. This would make Nagi a very huge hot piece and someone very easy to market. Noah himself commented on Nagi's moment, saying how his goal would put the world into a frenzy and stole the ace spot in a single bound. This one moment shook the world, and if he consistently put up performances like this, he would have easily earned the New Generation 11 title. But let's assume that every single title of New Gen has been distributed. What would happen then? You might say that Nagi would just never receive the title, and I don't think that's the case. If Nagi's performances put up better results, better marketing, and better profit gain for his respective country, he would likely take the title from an existing New Generation 11. Since the thing is just a title, it's a label that's slapped onto you. It can be easily removed and given to someone else. If you aren't putting up significant results to maintain your title, it can be taken from you. So go on and throw that up onto the bulletin board as well. But assuming you don't like the idea of the titles being stolen, there is the possibility that they just haven't been given out yet. When you look at some moments in the story with the New Generation 11, there are a lot of inconsistencies. For example, Isagi seems to be aware aware of who Sai, Kaiser, and Lorenzo are based on their titles, addressing them by their titles in the story, but when it comes to players like Bunny or Ugo, Isagi doesn't really seem to acknowledge that they're new gens or even be aware of it. Now, obviously, this isn't to say that Isagi is this higher power and should know everything, and Isagi not knowing inherently is not a plot hole in itself, but if anything, there is a lot of evidence to point towards the idea that the new Generation 11 titles have not all been distributed yet. First off, we know that in BLUELOCK, the BLUELOCKers themselves do not have access to their phones or any kind of social media. Isagi is actually shown in chapter 150 getting his phone back from Henri after the U20 game, stating how he hasn't had his phone in forever. There are only 2 people who are confirmed to have their cellular device in the BLUELOCK project: Nagi from his first selection performances and Haragi from the episode Nagi spin-off manga. Considering Nagi doesn't know too much about soccer as a whole and Haragi we don't really know much about him as a whole, I can't really see them doing research or reading articles on their phone figuring out who the new Generation 11 are, much less them doing so and it being addressed in the main story. There's always the possibility that Sai, Kaiser, and Lorenzo are the only new gens who have had the titles going into the BLUELOCK project, and the rest of the players like Bunny, Loki, and Ugo only received them while the BLUELOCKers were currently in the project and did not have their phones. It would explain why Isagi knows nothing about them, but even more so why Tokimitsu doesn't know anything about them. In chapter 88 before the World 5 game, Tokimitsu introduced Loki to Rain's team, explaining who he is as a player. And he mentions that Loki is a nationally represented player for France at just 17 years old. Tokimitsu even goes as far to say that he is a super nerd when it comes to soccer data and studies a ton of professional players from different leagues. And yet he didn't know Loki was a new gen? Hell, in the match against Loki in the World 5 game, in the match from episode Nagi, and in the NEL, it is never once stated that Loki is a new Generation 11. What if this is because during this period in the series, he wasn't. He didn't get his title yet. If the titles were still being distributed, it would explain why Tokimitsu had no knowledge of him before this. Now you can take that point and throw that onto the board as well. I think that this hypothesis in theory about the new Generation 11 titles still being in distribution makes a lot of sense in relation to existing theories about Loki. Loki is only 17, well 18 now, but as a national representative France player, not a lot of people know why he got the title. Some say that he was too good for it. Some people say that he was too overqualified. Actually, it was a lot of the same answers, just worded differently. It's like someone went to ChatGPT and asked them to type out, "Tell me different ways to say that I'm too good," and just selected the smartest sounding answer. But realistically, there's a lot of points that kind of make this argument of Loki being too good fall apart. First, when Tokimitsu is talking about Loki representing France, many suspected he was talking about at the national level, like the other master strikers, not with the current U20 players. But with the U20 World Cup, we see that Loki is actually playing with Charles, likely to surpass Noah as he stated he wanted to do. While yes, it is stated that a player can represent the team for the U20 World Cup and the Senior World Cup, it does feel a little bit odd when you look at other factors in the story. First off, his goal with Charles. Having Charles be this final piece for Loki to surpass Noah is all the reason for Loki to only represent France on the U20 level. This would be to help coax an awakening out of Charles to therefore let him surpass Noah. There's also the possibility that Loki dropped down to the U20 World Cup specifically to challenge Isagi after his dialogue with him in the NEL, but who knows? The second point you need to consider is the interactions between Noah and Loki. Since Loki and Noah are both French, they would both represent France nationally and as teammates, assuming Loki does play for them on this stage. But it doesn't seem like Noah has ever considered Loki to be a teammate in any capacity, even in passing dialogue, which stands to reason that Loki has yet to actually represent France at the senior level. With the World Cup taking place, every 4 years? This would mean that Loki would have had to be 14 during the last World Cup to be able to play alongside Noah. I know a lot of people say that BLUELOCK takes place in 2018, with that being the date started for the last World Cup and the story's starting release. However, we don't have any confirmation as to an in-universe date. But what if Tokimitsu wasn't talking about this Senior World Cup when he mentioned that Loki was representing France? Only the U20 level. The U20 World Cup takes place every 2 years, meaning it would have been evidence of Loki playing on the representative team at that level, enough to be recognized and acknowledged by Tokimitsu. But then why would the story make so much emphasis and make such a big deal on Loki representing a U20 team at the U20 level? Well, that would depend on status. France is currently dominating the soccer world in the Blue Lock universe, and according to Transfer Market, the average age for the U20 team is 19.4 years old. So someone starting for the U20 team in the strongest country in the world and is actually 2 years below the average age for that team, that's pretty impressive to me. It would explain those points and why Noah doesn't actually acknowledge Loki as a teammate, because they haven't actually played together. And for the third point, we really don't know anything about Loki's backstory. Loki could likely have been a rapid player, someone who shot up the charts to the professional stage incredibly quickly. I mean, it would make sense and obviously would be thematic with his core weapon. This could also tie into Isagi's comments about Loki being lucky to be born fast, since this speed is what Loki would have used to climb the ranks to the top so quickly. I mean, personally, I don't believe that this is entirely impossible. Ego was able to take a bunch of Japanese high school strikers and turn them into world-class players within the span of a year. We don't know too much about Loki's backstory or really anything connected to his growth as a player, so while this is just a theory, could be true. I would also say that this growth could be related to the Neo Egoist League, since those moments and those performances could have been what led to Loki getting the title in the first place. Assuming Loki was just an upstart player with very rapid growth, FIFA would likely want consistency with him before giving him the title. I mean, we saw with Nagi how he fell off after an incredible performance. It's possible that Ray Dark wants to be sure about Loki before giving him this title, assuming Loki was something similar. I mean, the comparisons between Nagi and Loki have already been drawn in the series, so maybe. But competing against other respective New Generation 11, the Blue Lockers themselves, and matching up against Noah and consistently winning, I think that this would be substantial evidence for Loki to receive the title. But why don't you just throw that up onto the bulletin board as well? And with that, our board is complete. So let me explain it all and kind of draw these connections for you. The title of New Generation 11 is something that can be given or taken by FIFA, aka Ray Dark. With evidence throughout the story and basic common logic, it's fair to conclude that the titles have either already been distributed and have been reassigned, or they have not been given out entirely. This second point ties in more with Nagi's performances in the NEL and the inconsistency of feats, making someone worthy or not worthy of the title, especially in relation to rapid growth, but also losing the title if their performances are not superior to someone else in terms of consistency. Combine that with the narrative lacking of social media connection, excluding players who likely wouldn't research or care about this information, it would make sense how even a super fan like Tokimitsu wasn't aware of Loki's title. And then you cross that with canon evidence about Loki and theories for his backstory and the rapid growth as a player, and you have solid speculation as to how Loki was never addressed as a New Generation 11 up until now in the story. I've been yapping about Loki for a long time during this video, to where I hope you didn't forget the other half of this theory. I believe that Loki possessing this title is evidence for a future villain and antagonist in the England match, the final match for Blue Lock in the group stage. I know this is crazy to say, but I think it is a solid possibility and prediction for another New Generation 11, or should I say former New Generation 11. Remember earlier how I discussed the possibility of the titles being redistributed due to someone underperforming or another player performing better? Well, that's what I think happened here. I think that with Loki's performances in the New Egoist League being shown off to the world, especially against Noah and Blue Lock, that this was the final push for FIFA to give Loki the title. I mean, like I said, competing with other New Generation 11, where one of them is screaming out that God is so unfair. Like, yeah, no shit, he deserves the title. And with Loki gaining the title, assuming that all 11 have already been distributed and assigned, one person would have to lose it. I believe that player is the New Generation 11 from England. I'm sure everyone knows of the flag theory in Blue Lock, where in chapter 303, we see a bunch of flags surrounding the world with the mention of the New Generation 11 in the corner. In my opinion, I do believe that this flag theory was true, and each of these flags associated with the respective New Generation 11, considering all of the previous New Gens before Loki and Ugo related to flags shown on this panel. But Loki's existence as a new gen disproves this entire theory, unless Loki was very recently given the title and stole it from another new gen. But how does this connect to the England match against BLUELOCK though, and set this player up as the next antagonist? Well, I personally believe that this English new gen would blame BLUELOCK for him losing this title. I know, weird projection, right? It just doesn't make sense until it does. I'm predicting that this new generation 11 from England, or the former new generation 11 from England, has a mentality that lets them view everything in terms of status, like a social hierarchy thing. Someone who holds a lot of value in someone's value. We have Lorenzo, who has a similar mindset, being someone who views people in terms of money, but this player would view people in terms of their relationship and placement in society. To put it into a comparison way, Lorenzo views people in terms of how much they're worth, like 50 million, 100 million, 250 million, etc. This guy would view people in terms of like tiers in a business: employee, manager, CEO, etc. And for him, he holds a lot of worth in how the world views him, his status in the world. I think that this concept would connect very well to the country of England, seeing as it's referred to as the homeland of soccer. You could have this player take pride in his title, and being from the homeland of the country, I think it'd be interesting to have a character like that. But with Loki's performances in the new Egoist League against BLUELOCK, his title was taken away from him, and he blames BLUELOCK for it. He would believe that Loki's performances in the new Egoist League is what gave him the title. So in his mind, if he can crush BLUELOCK and make himself seem better or have a better performance against them than Loki did, he will get his title back. I think moments of the new Egoist League really highlighted aspects within the soccer world, and I would really enjoy a new Generation 11 character being used to explore this concept. You have Snuffy, who tells his players that they are just a person before they're a player. You have Kaiser, who pushed to move to a new club to receive an offer so he can grow away from Noah at Bastion München. And you have Noah himself, who despite his status as the best in the world, it is still not enough for him. Having a player who holds their status and placement in society could be very interesting, maybe even correlating to a backstory where they were of a low status and worked hard to achieve what they got, kind of like Kaiser prior to his awakening. But it would also segue the story in the Blue Lockers to being of a similar level to the new Generation 11. Isagi in chapter 328 believes that he isn't on the level of the new gens individually, mentioning Loki, Lorenzo, and Kaiser as examples of players who are superior to him. But having BLUELOCK face a former new gen, that being the worst new gen previously, would be evidence to show that Japan as a whole is reaching that next level. That's just my theory as to how Loki's title of New Generation 11 could have been stolen, and how the former new gen will become an antagonist for BLUELOCK because of it. Now obviously this is just a prediction for how I believe the English New Generation 11 could be written, and I'd be curious as to what route or opposition BLUELOCK will face in that final group stage match. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I just want to leave a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video though, what do you think the English New Generation 11 will be like? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe to see more awesome BLUELOCK content just like this.